Today's sponsor is Eva, the best Amazon stock management tool. How much has going out of stock cost you over the lifetime of your business? And what is it going to cost you this Q4? Eva predicts precisely what stock you need. It learns from your account and it improves constantly. Eva serves hundreds of private label seven-figure sellers. To get a 15-day free trial, go to amazingfba.com/Eva. That's amazingfba.com/EVA. Ladles and jelly spoons, boys and girls, welcome back to the 10K Collective podcast, the place to be for 6, 7, and 8-figure Amazon private label and custom product sellers. We are talking to Mina, Elias. We're getting an absolute masterclass in Amazon and selling and product development from this man. So we are going to talk today about when life is a little bit tougher than all the advertised sitting on a beach kind of, accounting your passive income and the realities of how to deal with that. So first of all, welcome back to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me again.
You're such a live wire. We're going to plug into some of that energy now and get some can-do juice into this current situation. So obviously, the big current challenges, I would say, and I'd be very interested to hear what challenges you're experiencing, and above all, how you're handling them. I would say it's obviously international freight's getting incredibly expensive. Maybe it's 8x, maybe it's a 10x, i.e. 1,000% increase on this time last year. It's really delayed. Sometimes it's taking, China to UK or USA. It's taking double the usual times. Amazon PPC seems to have jumped up about 50% year on year. Maybe it's even more at the time of recording in October 2021. And not least, also Amazon FCs, the old warehouses, are not accepting stuff from some of us sometimes. And sometimes, as usual with Amazon, changing it quite quickly and without giving allegedly any good reasons. So these are the problems I'm seeing out there. What are you experiencing, and what are your solutions to, these big things? What are you grappling with?
Yeah, so I have a few problems myself. When you talk about Amazon rising costs of PPC, it's definitely a real thing. I don't think that it's inhibiting enough yet. And I just want to kind of explain to people like the way that I think about it when I look at the entire funnel. But essentially, what we're doing is we're launching campaigns on Amazon and we're getting impressions. And then through those impressions, the products are getting a certain number of clicks and we get a click-through rate. And then through those number of clicks, we're getting a certain conversion rate, and then we get a conversion rate. And so the different stages here I see are: what is the cost to drive one unique visitor to our listing, and then for the same amount of impressions, how can we get more people into our listing, and then for the people that are in our listing, how to get more people to convert. So essentially I have the three KPIs: cost per session, click-through rate, and conversion rate, that I'm really focused on. And I will make a list of every single thing that I can fix to, or that I can split this to improve my click-through rate and my conversion rate. Cost per session, we're not gonna, I mean, I'll cover it really quickly. Actually, it's a PPC, that's like my bread and butter. But with click-through rate, it's the main image, the title, the reviews, the rating, the price, if you have coupons, all of this stuff. So I'm constantly testing different main images, and pickfu.com is a really good test for that. If you don't want to go straight live test, I love to go straight live test, but if you maybe don't have the courage to go straight live test, you can always go to Pickfu and you can put your main image with a new main image next to it. Some people will say, well, what are you split testing on the main image? It's packaging, it's orientation. It's, one of my supplement bottles, I put a little star that looks like it's part of the product, but it not really is. But it says, 100 servings or 25 cents per serving, whatever, just kind of to change things up and see if any of these different main images, and I have one where the product is right there, one where the product is shot from up and kind of turned to the side. So I'm testing all these different things. I'm adding different coupons, I'm adding different, like a dollar or a percentage or this or that, and I'm trying to hone in on the highest click-through rate possible, and since if we're split testing price or whatever, to achieve the highest profitability. So trying to really move the needle there. With conversion rate, it's, again, I'm testing different images. Out of the 8 images, I'm adding different videos. I'm changing the bullet points and the description. I'm changing the title, moving keywords around. Same with the price and reviews and all that kind of stuff. And then also at the bottom, adding different questions, trying to, using Amazon posts, whatever, to get those Amazon posts on the product detail page. So I'm testing every single thing. And I have a change log, and the change log says the date of the change, the field that was changed, the old value, the new value. I have one per SKU. So, but if you want to do it all in the same one, you can just put the SKU or the ASIN or whatever, and then any notes. And and a click-through rate, conversion rate. So every single time I make a change, I will snapshot the click-through rate and the conversion rate, and then since the last change, and then from there, my goal is to always, every single time that I change something, look at the click-through rate and conversion rate, see if it improved. If I did something that improved it, I'll keep the change. If I did something that didn't, I'll switch it back. And it's always test, 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 test every single week, like very aggressively testing every single thing possible to improve that click-through rate and conversion rate. Why? Because I'm buying this traffic, and you're buying that traffic once, and once you buy that traffic, you can get 100 clicks, or you can get 1,000 clicks from it. You can get 10 sales, you can get 100 sales from it. It's the same. You bought that traffic once, so it's going to be the same. So from there, I'm really trying to get the most juice out of my squeeze, essentially. And then we move on to the cost per session. So I'm launching these campaigns, and the things that I'm looking out is, okay, do I have any keywords that are a little bit higher ACOS than desired, or the ROAS is not where it needs to be? I'll lower the bids a little bit. Do I have any keywords that are spending and not making the money that I need to? I'll lower the bids there. Do I have keywords in the auto and broad and phrase campaigns that are, again, underperforming? They're either spending too much and not making enough sales, or they're spending and not making any sales. I'll negative those. That's all to cut the cost per session, because my goal here is to, for the same amount of sessions that I'm getting, get it at the lowest price, and then from there get more sessions at that price. And we can also say, okay, for these keywords that where it didn't work out, where they were sponsored products, what if I launch a video campaign? What if I launch a headline search campaign? What if utilizing these different placements to, again, try and get a new customer for cheaper than what I'm getting now, or get more customers for that same price. And so those are the 3 KPIs that I'm hitting. And so that's kind of in that sense of PPC spend on Amazon is going up. That's how I'm figuring that's a problem out. And it is a problem, but the only thing that it forced me to do is what I'm telling you right now, is just to, maybe life was good 2017 and 2018, but now it's like a little bit tougher. That's all. So it's nothing inhibiting. That's my
Nice.
first point.
Wow. Yeah. So that's a really rigorous process you've got going there. By the way, it's simple point, but having a change log is so, as soon as you said it, I'm like, duh, of course. But it's one of those things that's very easy to skip. You get in there, you change stuff, and then you move on, and then you haven't clocked it. And of course, that seems like if you're very action oriented and you don't respect the value of data enough, that doesn't seem that important. But of course, what we really want is the data, right? If I change X, Y changes in the data. And you're so right to really be meticulous about that. I guess that's where your like scientific training really kicks in, right? Your that background and the
Yeah.
chemical engineering and stuff.
And it
So
took me a while. Yeah.
yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, it does sound pretty rigorous. So the other thing is obviously we're talking about some of these shortages and supply chain issues and stuff like that. I know you got a few solutions to that. So I would broadly classify this as you've got a lot of plan Bs in your business. So tell us a little bit about how that all works. How have you put that together?
So, one of my problems was the container problem. So I sell supplements, they're in a container, and I got a call from my manufacturer, and he said, Mina, I'm warning you right now. And this is, again, thank God for my really, really good relationship with my manufacturer, because probably he wouldn't, if we didn't have a good relationship, if I didn't call him every single week asking about his wife and kids and all this stuff and sending him gifts to his house all the time, he would never pick up the phone and tell me this. But he picked up the phone and said, there's going to be a massive shortage in containers. I'm letting you know right now, like, figure something out. And I'm like, stressing at home, and I'm like, man, what can I do? And so it came to me, and this was also like through the conversation with him and stuff like that, but we came to the conclusion that I need a backup form of that container. And it can't be anything China based or whatever, because then you're defeating the purpose. So either I'm going to get it maybe from Mexico or something, or I'm going to get it from the US. And something that's made in the US is aluminum foil bags. So the bags that you see, some of the protein powders, the teas, whatever that are in, those are all full made in the US. The raw materials are in the US. Everything's in the US. So there's not really going to be a shortage anytime soon. So what I did is, for every single product that I had, I created a 2 to 3 month supply of bags for that product. And then I said to my design team, I said, we have a bag now. I want you to duplicate everything that we have on the website, on the Amazon listings, everything, but switch out the bottle for a bag. And the second that I hit that problem, which is so far we haven't hit the shortage yet, but and run completely out. But if I ever had hit that point where we run completely out, then instantaneously I can switch everything on the Amazon, all the listing images, all the enhanced brand content. I can switch everything on the website, and my manufacturer will send in, new bags, and or it's nothing. It's like nothing ever happened. So that was kind of my first solution.
Yeah, amazing. And by the way, little hint that you buried in there, having a great relationship with a supplier is so important. Again, it's not just about getting a lower cost or something like that. In this case, it was about having a heads up about supply chain shortage. They're going to see it before you do, right? So really, something people don't talk about enough is that communication flow with a supplier. Often it seems to be a sort of adversarial relationship rather than like if you both communicate really effectively, then both of your lives are going to get better, right? So really super smart. And what I also love is the fact that you've got your plan B absolutely nailed and ready to go, as opposed to just panicking, which is like the default in this situation. So that's incredibly proactive, and like hats off for that. So I know that obviously one of the other things we've got is that supply chain costs are up for a lot of raw materials. So tell us about your solutions there.
Yeah. A couple of times I hit that like high supply chain cost issue. And the first one was he called and he said, one of my ingredients just quadrupled in price. And I said, are you serious, man? And I think he said, he's like, yeah, I quadrupled in price, and probably I can only get you stuff to last you for like 6 weeks. And I said, okay, what about after 6 weeks? He said, yeah, like there's nothing is guaranteed. So one of the things that solution that I came up with was, and this might not apply to everyone, obviously, because it's very supplement specific, but I decided to change my labels. And instead of having a very like strict labeling, which I said I have this much of this ingredient, this much of this, I created a blend in which that ingredient was in a blend. And once I did that, it gave me a little bit more flexibility to kind of, if that ingredient is almost out, then I can use a different ingredient because it's all in a blend. And so I'm not restricted as long as the whole blend reaches that, number of grams, there's no issues with that. So it's one of those things. I kind of was given a constraint, and I said, okay, what is all of the constraints that I have to meet, and what is truly set in stone and what is not? Because in reality, I could have just recreated new labels and completely remove that ingredient and put something else in. So it's always good to really dig deep and investigate what is my true constraints, because nothing is really a constraint. It's always like what you want and then what is available. So and there's a lot to work with. So maybe someone is developing a product that requires like these different parts from China, and the price went up. But what if you change the product slightly? It's still going to solve the same problem, but you're not using these parts anymore. You're doing something else, and maybe it's a temporary thing, and then you switch it back. And a lot of people think like once you have a product out there, it's stuck and it's unchangeable. And I don't think that's true. I think you change it a lot because the whole world is changing, and if whatever one ingredient is out, it's out. And so that's kind of one way that I combated that. But also I have to be real, like I raised my prices like everyone else did, and inflation is happening. I raised my prices a significant amount. My manufacturer raised this, but I told my manufacturer, is there anything you can do? My cost of goods went up to $2. And he's like, listen, like, we thought about it so much, and it's like, there's nothing we can do. We just have to increase the prices. And inflation is going to happen. And I'm sure all the restaurants are increasing their prices, and everyone is, all the stores are increasing their prices. So sometimes things are just, inflation is inflation.
Absolutely. So I would say a couple of things. First of all, I really like what you're thinking about the solutions around the products. Like you say, identifying the real constraints and what is set in stone. And I guess, as you say, as long as you're not mismatching a promise or something on the label with what people actually get, because that will get you kicked off Amazon and might be illegal. But I can't get that side. nothing
Unless
is
you
really
change the
set in
label
stone,
too,
is it? Yeah, exactly.
right?
So you just make sure there's a match between the two, and then suddenly nothing's really set in stone, is it? You're just offering a different thing. So
Yeah.
you have to have the mental flexibility to do that, I guess. But also, yeah, as you say, raising prices. That the entire theme of the last mastermind meeting I had with this seven and in some cases even almost eight-figure sellers in London that we meet with was basically the conclusion was prices are going up on our buy side. Consumer inflation is a real thing, so let's have the cojones, the stones to raise our prices. And in some markets, they'll be the first people to move, and that's kind of scary. But I don't think that your competitors are going to be far behind. I mean, what's your view on that? I mean, are you
Yeah,
following
like
other
all of
people
my
in raising your
competitors.
prices, or were you the first?
No, I wasn't the first to do it. I think a couple have done it. I was one of the first to do it. But I look at my market now, and everyone across the board has raised their prices. The only ones that haven't are the ones that are using cheap ingredients. And like there's a couple of electrolyte powders that is just all sugar. And I mean, when 90% of your formula is sugar, it's not really a big deal for them. So they didn't have to raise their prices. But yeah, maybe you can trick a few uneducated consumers, but the general population is gonna see that this is not a good product. And again, there's something about the psychology of pricing. And if everyone is priced at 28 and you're priced at 19.99, like it's 3 years ago, people might say, yeah, there's something wrong with this product. So I think I'm still in line with where I was with my competitors. So I still have the competitors that were more expensive are now $3 more expensive. The competitors that were a little bit less expensive were still like $2 less expensive, and I'm still in that range. And someone once told me you should always be competing on offer, not on like the value, which is like a super kind of like it really hit me. It's like someone should never look at your product and start judging based on the price, because if that happened, then your offer is not compelling enough, and that's like an issue. But once your offer, like if you showed up and you saw like a Lamborghini or whatever, and someone said, yeah, it costs this much, you're not going to be like, well, let me see what the closest second to a Lamborghini is and kind of choose that option, because that's the offers of the Lamborghini comes with the status of a Lamborghini. You're not going to get the status of a Lamborghini with another car. So you're kind of this is it, you're going to pay for it, you're either going to pay for it or not. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that really stuck with me too.
Either that or you end up with a Lexus, which is like the poor man's Lamborghini, and you're basically advertising you couldn't afford a Lamborghini, but you kind of aspire to one. You're better off getting a Mercedes. Anyway, my view. I mean, but yeah, you're right. The offer thing, to your point that you were making in the previous episode about the creating you were saying you should look at what you think is your close competition because you shouldn't have direct competition. I guess
Mhm.
in this kind of scenario, this is when it really shows up, right? If you're selling something that is a substitute for coffee, in other words, it gives you the benefits that coffee gives you, i.e., the energy hits, but without the downside, jitteriness, a sort of spike, and then a trough in blood sugar, right? Then there shouldn't be any direct A/B price comparison, right? It shouldn't be a comparison shopping site from what you were saying. And so it strikes me that this is the acid test, isn't it, really? When you have to raise your price, do people still buy your stuff because what you offer is unique? What's your
Yeah.
experience with that? I mean, does when you've raised your prices, well, okay, I should ask the question: have you raised your prices where the competition hasn't, and how drastic is the effect on your conversion rate, your sell through and stuff?
So I most recently raised my price about $5 and a unit, and I maybe took a 20% hit in my revenue, but my profits are significantly higher. So all in all, the EBITDA of the business is still really good.
Yeah, and this is one point that I keep trying to make to people. I'm like, Amazon wants you to play the game where you obsess about, unit volumes as being as high as possible. But actually, if you want profit, you could probably sell a heck of a lot less in terms of units or even revenue and make more profit. And this is something that kind of is obvious. It's like, accounting 101, but people don't actually do it, do they? I mean, what do you see? I don't know if you coach clients and things in this, but what sort of
I
things
love
do you
that. I
see?
love that you brought this up, because I spoke about this at a conference recently in August, and I was saying like there is a very fine balance between like profit, or there's like a balance between profit and scale. And so one of my products, just one product, was selling 70,000 units, so 70,000 sorry dollars a month, and the net profit at the end of the month was something like $15,000, and it was a lot of PPC spend and all of this kind of stuff. And then I said, you know what, like let me see if I can really like cut down. And I cut down a lot of the PPC spend, and my sales went from 70 to like $40,000 a month, and I still had the same amount of profits. And I said, why was I doing this? I mean, the numbers look nice when you want to like brag to some people, but like, who cares? You know, I stopped even the only people that know my numbers are my accountant and stuff like my advisors, just so they can make like accurate decisions. But I don't care about sales numbers anymore because I know people who are making so much money in revenue and then taking home a lot less than I am, or maybe not taking home anything from their business. So at the end of the day, I was like, why am I reordering so many times from my manufacturer? Why am I picking up the phone so many times and calling my manufacturer saying, hey, how's it going? What's the status on this product? When at the end of the day, I made the same amount of profit, and my business was going to be valued the same, because your business is valued on gross profit or sales discretionary earnings. It's not valued on your revenue number.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing that I keep trying to drive home to people. I'm like, look, you can't pay yourself from revenue, so it doesn't make any difference to your personal income from your business if you're paying yourself. And it won't make any difference to the value when you sell it. So it's actually a meaningless number. Like revenue, they say turnover is vanity. This turnover is maybe a British word for revenue. Profit is sanity and cash is king. But like, it's not only that, it's just like revenues kind of doesn't exist because it never even hits your bank account if you're selling on Amazon, right? It's a number that
Yeah.
appears on your Seller Central account, but we never get it.
It's
It
like points. It's when you go to the arcade and you get like 100 points and they get you these tickets, and then at the end of the day, like what are you gonna get with those tickets? Because maybe they give you 1 million tickets and you can buy like a little teddy bear, and then you're like, wow, like this is it was pointless.
Yeah, I mean, my wife plays like Plants vs Zombies obsessively, and the thing is that she knows she's not getting paid any money for this, so she's like one of the best in the world every so often. I'm like, okay, but it's just a game, and she knows it's just a game. She's not deluding herself that it's anything else, not trying to pay the mortgage with it. So that aside, apart from trying to persuade people to focus on profit, which is kind of like, pretty obvious and yet very rare in execution. Let's talk about happiness a bit, because one of the things that suffers in this situation is that people get very, very stressed, and understandably, and God knows I sympathize. But it's important to enjoy your work, isn't it? Because we got into this because we wanted to be entrepreneurs, and at some level we've got to honor that even in the difficult times. So
Mhm.
how do you keep your head straight with this stuff, and how do you manage the workload as well? So two different questions, taken in whichever order you
Yeah.
want.
How do I keep my head straight? And it's two things. It's number one, I try and stay like very non-emotional when it comes to the business. And the best way to do that is when you don't have a plan and you're just looking at the numbers and you're looking at sales going up and down and things like that. It's you can get it pretty emotional, and it's almost like when you step on the scale and you just see your weight is going up and you're like, "Ah, like I feel bad, like I'm getting fatter." But because I have a list of like levers that I can pull, because I have a list of actions that I'm taking, and because I have a very clear list of key performance indicators, it's never, hey, my revenue went down. It's always like, did my impressions go down? Did my cost per session go up? Did my click-through rate go down? Did my conversion rate go down? What happened? Did my number of keywords that are ranked go down? And so because I have those KPIs in there, it's instead of like, oh, I just got fat, it's like, oh, I ate breakfast, like a too big of a breakfast, 5 days in a row. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to cut down on the breakfast. And it's the same thing. It's like, oh, I noticed that my click-through rate and conversion rate went down. Well, like, let's dig deeper. What could possibly cause it? If you can identify the issue, no problem. Just start testing different things and improve it. And so because I have that kind of approach, and it's a very action driven approach, I'm never emotional about them. Say, okay, my revenue went down. Let's get to the root cause. Let's break it down. Which metric, suffered the most in the last 30 days? This metric suffered the most. That's cool. What are the levers that I can pull to improve that metric? Okay, let's create a plan and let's start working on it. So that's one thing. Another thing is also, I have an agency and I have a business, like a supplement brand. And a lot of people don't talk about this, but I was living off of my supplement brand, and it was super emotional because the months that I did amazing, life was good. I always pulled the same amount of salary, but when I pulled the salary and the business was doing amazing, life was good. But when I pulled the salary and the business wasn't doing amazing, it was very emotional, and I felt upset. And I was choking the business more than was already being choked. And so when I started the agency, I got, this cash flow coming in from the agency, and I stopped taking money out of the business and started growing it as an asset. So I want to like also let people know, if you're in the process of starting an Amazon business because you think that you're going to leave your 9 to 5 job and then you're going to pull salary out of the business. I've been there. You can do it. It's just going to be very stressful because your life is on this constant roller coaster of maybe 1 month you're making good money, 1 month you're not making good money. And the only way to do that with only having an asset-based business is if you grow it big enough that you can at that point kind of pull money out without it being affected. So my friend who hit like I think 5 million or 3 million or something a year in revenue, so significant amount, and was pulling a $60,000 a year salary. So once it got that big, he was able to pull that salary out without, and even with the fluctuations, his salary didn't make a big difference. So you can either wait until you get this point, or you can maybe go and if you're unhappy with your job, right, and which is something that I would have done, is moved and gone to work for something that would help you build the skills that you're currently using to build your business, but also be in a happy environment where you don't feel like you're in a rush to quit your job so much and still have some cash flow, but you're also developing skills that you can monetize, and then maybe become like me, where you have a service side and you use that service side to fund your life. And then if you have really good skills, it's not going to take that many hours a week, and then spend the rest of the time growing your business and reinvesting all of that money into that asset, and then sell the asset and then make the money there. So that's kind of a couple of things that help me, stay level headed. And I think times get tough, and I always think about like truly the worst case scenario. Every day I wake up, sometimes things happen, and I'm always like, what is really the worst case scenario? Like if I lose all of this, like what would happen? I would be sitting on my couch, and then what? And then I really play out the scenario, and it's usually not bad. It's usually like, okay, it's gonna suck that first day, but then I'm gonna get on the computer, I'm gonna do 1 2 3 4 5, and then I'm gonna be able to do this and this and this, and everything will come back to normal eventually. So always playing out that worst case scenario all the way to the end, as if it's like a full movie in my head, allows me to kind of realize that none of this stuff is a big issue. It's not really a problem. It's just my emotions that make it label it as a problem.
Wow, it reminds me very much of that thing that I think Tim Ferriss talks about in the 4 Hour Work Week, which the actual title is not something I endorse or some of the stuff, but I think some of the thinking in it's very very good quality, and like that idea of playing out the worst case scenario, and then what would happen if your Amazon business absolutely blew up? Well, maybe you'd have to go and get a day job for a while. And then you still got the skills, you got the knowledge, you got the contacts. You'd probably be creating a brand within the next year. And if you don't have the money, but you have the skills, and there are people out there with the money without the skills. Trust me, there people have tried to throw money at me in the past to create a private label brand for them. And I've said, look, I can't do what you want to deliver. So I'm saying no, but they had hundreds of thousands of pounds available. There are people with money out there. So I really like that I guess I'm painting a really bleak picture, but honestly, like it's not normally as extreme as that. And I guess all of us experience that moment where heart-stopping moment where your main listing gets suspended for 3 weeks, or even worse. And many people I know experience the entire Amazon account suspended, and it's as a one of my clients put it, a pants-filling moment, and it's horrendous for 3 weeks. And then maybe a year later, you're like, oh yeah, that happened, and it was horrible. But 5 years
Yeah.
later, you're like, I can't remember which year it was now. Maybe it was December 2019, and it all falls into perspective, right? It's very very hard to do at the time, and it sounds like you're pretty good at handling that. Thank you for your honesty about
it's
the agency and the
it's
brand
better.
relationship as well.
It gets better with everything, with every bad thing. And again, I always like to tell people, it's never good or bad. It's just a thing that happened. It's a fact, and then we're labeling it as good or bad. So I try and
True.
never label anything as good or bad. I mean, good, yes, it's always good to be positive, but try and never label anything as bad. But then the more that these quote unquote bad things happen, you just start getting numb to it, and you're like, it's just another day, it's just another fire.
Just another fire, yeah. That kind of feels like an Amazon seller speaking there. That's real. That's actual real life, yeah. But I really like the mentality that the thing you're focusing what's on under your control and finding root causes. That's really really powerful. And the other thing you were saying, which is a very interesting sort of thought, is that it always strikes me like a lot of Amazon sellers. It's a bit like you built a house that you want to, property, real estate, and you want to, you buy a plot of land, you build a house with great blood, sweat, and tears, and then you want to sell it off for a large amount more than the raw materials and labor cost you. Great. But in the meantime, you're kind of living in it, but you're living in the kitchen at one end of the kitchen trying to make coffee and look after your kids. And then the other end of the kitchen, there's a builder with a drill. And it strikes me that some people, when you're trying to live off your business and grow an asset to sell at the same time, it's a very uncomfortable
I love that
juxtaposition, isn't it?
analogy. I use
Yeah.
that analogy all the time, and I always say, like, building an Amazon business is exactly the same as buying a plot of land. Like, you found a piece of land and you bought it, and what did you do? You put a 15K 20K launch. So you bought the plot of land for whatever it costs, and then you're hiring the architect and engineer, and then there's whoever is going to do the zoning, all this stuff, and you're building and building, and it's a lot of putting money in and never seeing any return. And then when you rent it out, once it's all done, you might see some return. Or then when you sell the entire house with the land and everything, maybe you paid 100,000 for the piece of land and you sold the house for 750,000. So that's kind of like the analogy is, that's how your Amazon business is going to be. The second that you buy this land, you might be kind of sold on, like, some people immediately brought in like 10 tents and they made it a glamping thing, and wow, they're like cash flowing in the first month, right? And there's a lot of people that sell that dream, but not everyone can do it. And maybe they just had like some sort of exception, or maybe they're lying. But it's essentially creating an Amazon business is exactly like buying a piece of land. It's an asset. It needs a lot of investment to develop. And then once it's an asset that can cash flow, someone else will come and buy it for a lot of money and say, yeah, because this cash flowing asset, I can add it to my other portfolio of cash flowing assets and create a bigger portfolio of cash flowing assets, and then share the back office or whatever. They have better supply chain and improve these things and make it more cash and all this kind of stuff. So that's the way I would look at it. A lot of people think it's something that you can start a business and make money out of it. And maybe like 6 months in, I was making few thousand, $4,000 a month in profits. But as soon as I started taking money, the entire business kind of plateaued and started to die a little bit. And so that's what I would warn people.
Yeah, I've heard from a lot of people that they kind of regret when if they take money out of the business too early. It's a bit like, you've got a
I
little sort
regret
of
it.
delicate apple tree and you start plucking all the stuff from it instead of letting the thing grow into a big, strong tree. As you said, you get it to $5 million in revenue and you're taking 60K out of it. It doesn't matter if the revenue fluctuates between annualized 3 million and 6 million. It's not going to make a big difference. But until that point, as you say, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having multiple income streams. People get very kind of purist about this. And like, if you've got the skills to run an agency on the side or to advise people, or maybe you work in somebody else's business and learn on somebody else's dime for a day a week, whatever. I mean, as you say, it's good to just find a way that is less,
Yeah.
like the way you put it, get less emotional, less of that roller coaster, because that's, it's part of the experience for a lot of people, isn't it? But I guess what you're saying is it doesn't have to be, which is really great to
Yeah.
hear. So look, we better let you get back to, building your empire, obviously incredibly effectively. Been fantastic to talk to you. Really feel like I plugged into the national grid here and getting all your energy and great focus. So fantastic stuff. If people wanted to speak to you or hear more from you, obviously we haven't even mentioned anything commercial at all, but you got your PPC agency and training side. I mean, why don't we talk about that just briefly?
Yeah.
Tell us what you do there.
Yeah, in terms of the PPC, I developed that skill. I think as an engineer, I was very naturally inclined to like understand numbers and optimize and data analytics and that kind of stuff. So I got really good at it. I started sharing value for free. People started applying it. They loved it. It worked for them. I started getting consultation calls, that kind of stuff. And fast forward, I hired an employee, a couple of employees. They were managing my own stuff, and people, I had a couple of friends hit me up. They said, "Please, like, we're dying. We need someone to manage our PPC." Took them on, and I helped an aggregator build their in-house systems and things like that. And so, at a point, I realized, I have a really good skill, and there's a lot of people out there that need it, and there's a lot of bad services out there. So I started offering, the agency is called Trivium and Trivium Group, and I started offering PPC management as a service. But I also early on created a full tactical and like technical course on Amazon advertising, Amazon PPC. It's called the ppcuniversity.com, and that's where it's like I think a 40 video course where you just go through step by step every single little piece, and every single action. And it's almost like like a driving course. It's not like selling the dream where I say, apply my PPC tactics and you're gonna, be a billionaire. It's just like, here's everything that you can do, and here's how you can adjust it, and here's all the knobs, and here's the best practices, and here's everything that I've tested and the results. And you can take that knowledge and then apply it to your own things. And every case is going to be different. But if you understand how to control and pull the levers and then interpret the data and then make adjustments after, then you should be able to handle your own thing. Or if you just want to learn, because then you want to hold your agency accountable, or you want to hold your VA accountable, which I highly, highly recommend, then I would do that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when it comes to hiring an agency is that if you don't understand their business pretty much as well as they do, you can't really monitor their results. So, I mean, it's a very, very good point that just, it's not about fire and forget,
And
is
there's
it,
a
as an
lot of
agency?
swindlers out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to be fair, it's just constantly shifting the sand. So they may feel they're doing a good job and you may feel they're doing a good job. That doesn't mean it's objectively true. And the only way you're going to know that is if you know the business, I guess. So that's ppcuniversity.com, right, for that. So
And the
um,
people.
it's yeah, it's great to talk to you, and I just feel like it's a refreshing change that you're very, very sort of focused on the operation side and very little about selling your own agency. I have to kind of prompt you to do it because you're just very focused on, doing the business. I think, and you're a living example of the kind of mentality as well as the success story. And been great to talk to you, man. Really glad we managed to hook up finally, and I hope everyone takes some valuable lessons from this stuff. I know I
I hope
am.
so too. I mean, knowledge is nothing, right? Unless you put it into action. So even if there's like a few things out of this episode, you can always bookmark it. Like if you're listening to this in the car or something, kind of take a screenshot whenever I say something that you want to implement, and then just go back and watch those parts and write it down and just start taking action. And one thing that I do, I want to share with everyone, it's really changed my life. It hasn't changed my life, okay, but it's improved every my business. But every month I will look at my businesses and I will create three goals, maximum of three. I learned this from a friend. Her name's Amy Weiss, and I took three goals, and out of those three goals, it's like, like, okay, what do I want to look like in 1 year? So, what are three things, three goals that I want to accomplish this month that will get me closer to my, ultimate goal? And then each goal, I break it out into four, and then I schedule it through the 4 weeks of the month. And so that's really, at the beginning of the month, I really look and say, what are just three things that I want to get accomplished? And it's really been helping me kind of stay on a super straight and focused track. And if anyone thinks I'm super focused, I'm the opposite. I'm very easily swayed into attractive things. And I wanted to touch on this when you talked about other sources of income. Is I tried a lot of other sources of income, and I was like a little bit in this and a little bit in that, and a little bit, and it really kind of all hurt me in the end. So if you're like me and you have like some focus issues and you're always attracted to like these different shiny objects, I think it's a really good practice, because you always have to sit down with yourself and say, what are three things that I need to do this month that will move the needle in my business? And once you identify them, you break them down, you execute that month, and everything kind of moves forward.
Nice. I like that. It's nice and simple. So basically, what I want the business to look like in 1 year, set three goals this month to get me close to that, break each goal into four, schedule it one per week.
And one of them
Simple.
each week. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it. That's very, very good. And yeah, thank you for being honest about the fact that you come across incredibly focused, but maybe like everyone else got an entrepreneurial ADHD. I mean, I'm certainly absolutely suffer from that. So I know a lot of people that do as well. So that sounds like a good sort of counterbalance to that. So really, really, really helpful little hack that actually, is pretty, pretty powerful system by the sound of it. So listen, we better let you dash on. Thank you so much for coming on, Mina Elias of MMA Nutrition. Been a real pleasure to
Yes.
talk to you.
Talk to you soon.